The Unit for Documentary Heritage, in fact, acts as the secretariat of the Memory of the World program. And this program itself was set up in 1992 with three specific objectives. The first one is to identify documentary heritage of national, regional, and international significance. The second one is to preserve it. And the third one is to provide universal access to it. Documentary heritage is cultural heritage that is documented. So, for example, the mountain inscriptions in AlUla would be documentary heritage in that sense.
AlUla has been an important location, an important crossroads for thousands of years, not only because it's an oasis, but also it is the easiest way of crossing the mountains, both north-south and, importantly, east-west to the Red Sea to the west here. So people have traversed this landscape and focused and crossed AlUla for thousands and thousands of years. So what we have actually here in AlUla is one of the richest cultural landscapes in any part of this region of the Middle East.
With regard to archaeology and epigraphy and heritage in general, the region of AlUla is a very special place because there are many archaeological sites and many significant sites with a lot of written material in them.
And then around the oases all along the valley, in the mountain areas, everywhere where people went, you find inscriptions. They're just everywhere.
Traces of writing do not appear before maybe 7th, 8th century BCE, so that's almost 3,000 years ago. Before then, there were what we call rock drawings, and so rock drawings are a way to express what people felt and the landscapes they saw and the animals they bred or they met. The region of AlUla is extremely rich in rock drawings like that, from all sorts of periods. There are bovids from the Neolithic, but you also have camels, you have donkeys, you have horses, you have ostriches, even if now they have disappeared, lions, etc. So the amount of animal species that one can see engraved and drawn, sometimes very beautifully on the rocks around AlUla, is huge.
دائما أطلع يعني أجلس يوم يمكن يومين وبعدين أطلع وأشوف لأني جيت هنا أتردد عليه وأكتشف شيء جديد. ثاني شيء إني اشتقت لها يعني وأنا رايح مثلا مسافة بعيدة مثلا تبوك ولا بعيد وأشوف جبل أطلع له أروح أشوف هذا في شيء ولا ما في الطريقة ولا نجي مثلا مع الطريق هذا نطالع بهذا نشوفه من هنا كذا نفتشه تفتيش حتى نتأكد إن ما في شيء. لقينا في شيء وثقنا. هذه المهنة مهنة شريفة ومهنة يعني ممتعة وطيبة ويعني يتمتع الإنسان فيها في مناظرها وتعني لنا أنها يعني شيء رصيد يعني قوي للسواح والمكتشفين وكذا. نعم أنا فخور وبعدين احنا فهمنا من هذه الرسوم وهذه كذا إن العالم كلها كانت موجودة هنا.
As an archaeologist, working on archaeological sites, we find ruins of buildings and we find the detritus, the rubbish that people left behind, the broken pottery, and they tell a certain amount of story. But really, it's only a tiny portion of the story of people's lives. At Jabal Ikmah, we have an insight into the lives and the beliefs and what was concerning the people of Dedan and Lihan that we can't get anywhere else. That fleshes out the story and brings humanity into the science of it all.
أهلا في جبل عكمة المكتبة المفتوحة. Here we have multi-inscriptions between religious inscriptions and political inscriptions. If you can look over there, you will see that stone. It was in that mountain. When it fell down, the Lihyanid start writing on it the names of their kings, starting by Hanus bin Shahar, then his son Shahr bin Hanus, and so on. And that goes back to the 6th century BC when the Lihyanid settled in Dedan. The rest of the inscriptions actually talk about what they gave to their god, about their sacrifices.
We are in Jabal Ikmah, one of the most important archaeological sites of AlUla. The site features hundreds and hundreds of valuable inscriptions inscribed in a Dedanetic script. Imagine that one inscription is a window to the past, and within this gorge you have more than 300 inscriptions clustered in one place. The first epigrapher to study the site was a German epigrapher. Her name was Ruth Stiel. She came here in 1968. One day she was walking around the farms just around Ikmah over there. She found a small child. His name was Raja. I met Raja 50 years later in the same site, and he's the one who told me the story. And this definitely tells us the importance of local communities as key stakeholders of shedding light on the important archaeological sites within any region.
أول لقاء طبعاً أتت هذه الباحثة إلى العلا تبحث عن بعض الآثار التي تخص الحضارات العربية القديمة، وأتت إلى أمارة العلا واصطحبهم الوالد وأتوا لنا في العذيب، ومن ثم قابلت هذه الألمانية لأول مرة. كان معها طبعاً فريق علمي يتكون من 4 أشخاص، ثم من شغفها وعجلتها لم تمكث طويلاً قالت هل تصطحبني إلى هذا المكان الآثار اللي تعرفها؟ طبعاً وريتها عدة نقوش، ولكن عندما أتت إلى هذا النقش فهي سررت كثيراً، ولدرجة أنها في العناق من الأرض إلى الأحضان، فكانت تبحث عن ظلتها المنشودة في هذا المكان. لأن ما كنا ندرك، إحنا نجد أن هذه نقول هذه ناس أقوام ذكريات، ما علمنا أنها تدون حضارات الأمم الماضية كمعبوداتهم الدينية، كأسماء ملوكهم، كأسماء صكوك الأراضي. فحنا ندون الآن على الورق، هم يدونون على الجبال.
For example, this inscription over here mentions a king. So it mentions that this was inscribed in the era of Salhan, or في مرأة Salhan. Salhan is one of the kings who ruled in Dedan. You could see the limits of the inscription within the frame over here. And as I've mentioned, the ones over here in this rock are valuable because they were inscribed by artisans and craftsmen. Perhaps they were even commissioned. You know, not everybody could actually execute such beauty and art. So they cut or they carved the rock itself so that the letters pop from the stone. And that's definitely more difficult than inscribing directly on the rock, just like in this case. Within this scenery, there was an action of intercultural dialogue in the past. The number of places mentioned rather than the original place of the AlUla oasis, indicates that this place was a place for people to meet and gather, and perhaps exchange even goods or exchange experiences and have more society, perhaps relationships between each other within the Arabian Peninsula, and of course, beyond that too.
The particular interest in the Daranitic inscriptions was based on the sort of wide variation, linguistic variation that is attested in the inscriptions. And in terms of just the history of the place, it is very interesting to both have these official inscriptions that document the more sort of organized things that people do, organized religion. But on the other hand, also the more private inscriptions where people just left their names, sometimes with a short curse to protect their inscription. So in that sense, also from a historical perspective of understanding how the oasis worked, both politically and on a more sort of social history level, it is really interesting to have both these genres of inscriptions there.
Now we are at Hegra. Hegra was one of the most important cities at the Nabatean Kingdom. It thrived as a result of its strategic location and the ancient incense trading route. So when the caravans came from southern Arabia, Hegra was like essential stepping point. Okay, it was like the connection between southern and northern Arabia. When the caravans arrived here, it was like a place for rest, reload, and trade. Then they go up to the north, to Mesopotamia or to Mediterranean part to ship to Europe.
Hegra is often called the Petra's little sister. Petra was the capital of the Nabateans. Hegra was also a Nabatean city, quite large. In Hegra, maybe 80% of the text are graffiti and therefore signatures of people more or less elaborated, but they are interesting. Even if they are just signatures, they are interesting. And the last 20% are legal texts, religious texts, dedications, or dedications of objects, etc. So these legal texts, they are carved on the facade of the monumental Nabatean tombs that one can see in Hegra. And these texts are relatively long, and they say exactly who is allowed to be buried inside the tomb and what is allowed or not allowed. For instance, it is not allowed to take a limb out of the tomb, or it's not allowed to move someone out, or to put someone in who is not part of the family. And so all these things are mentioned, and there are also fines which are mentioned specifically. And usually the largest the tomb is, the largest the amount of the fine is, which is logical. The more you pay for your tomb, the less you want people to damage it or to take your body out. If you take a group of, let's say, 100 texts, which are written in one particular place on a caravan route, and you record all the names mentioned in these graffiti, then you do the same 40 kilometers later. You find another site, and you find the same guys. They have written in one place, which was a watering place, then they write a second time 40 kilometers or 30 later. That means that you are on a caravan trade route. Northern Arabia and the routes which go through AlUla are, for the moment, the only region in the Middle East where it was possible to trace these ancient caravaneers. The inscription of Zuhair in the Wadi al-Mu'tadil is a very important early Arabic inscription because it is one of the earliest dated to the Hegra era, and it says, أنا زهير كتبت عام توفي عمر سنة 24. I am Zuhair and I wrote this the year Umar died, which is year 24. And year 24 corresponds exactly to 644 CE. And so apart from having for the first time a very, very early Arabic inscriptions from the Islamic period, it is interesting from the point of view of the writing because it uses diacritical marks in a non-systematic way. Initially, Arabic did not use diacritical marks to write the letters, and because it comes from Nabatean, the Arabs who first used Nabatean or a developed form of Nabatean to write Arabic, they had a big problem. So Aramaic has 22 written characters. Arabic has 28 letters and sounds. So how can you match 28 letters on one side with 22 on the other side? Well, very simply, you use sometimes twice the same character of Aramaic to write the same letter. The script which was used by the nomads, or even Dadanitic, which has 28 sounds, would have been much more adapted to write Arabic. But Dadanitic was not chosen. And in a way, we may even say that one of the most important legacy of the Nabateans is the Arabic script.
So as soon as you start to think about why there is linguistic variation, you already get into the issue of why were people writing, who was writing. It wasn't just about leaving any trace, it was about doing something quite specific, I think. So in that sense, it's a nice meeting point of wanting to leave a trace and commemorate things, but then what people choose to commemorate says a lot about what was important, the writing tradition and the writing culture in which they participated.
What happened here and was recorded within inscriptions gives us a glimpse of what happened in the Middle East or this part of Asia 3,000 years ago. And this definitely affects the journey of humanity in general. If this gap was not fulfilled with the information we could get from these inscriptions, then, you know, a very important segment of the journey of humanity would be lost.
Cultural heritage, documentary heritage in particular, doesn't really belong to one area, one community, and one group. It's really a global resource. It tells the story of the world, all different bits of it, from all over the place. It's one of the ways that we connect ourselves because we are self-reflective animals. And as we self-reflect, we write it down. And that's a commonality across all communities, all cultures, all societies over time. RCU is incredibly excited to be partnering with UNESCO on this Memory of the World program because it fits us in to that endeavor to understand us through our written heritage and through our documentary heritage.
Of course, the intention, as far as we are concerned, is for people to make sense of this documentary heritage in their lived experiences. What does it really mean? So there is a whole lot of learning that can happen as a result of consuming documentary heritage, helping people to have a sense of the past, helping people to understand their present, and also how to relate to one another. And for UNESCO, key to that process is forging international cooperation, which in turn could potentially help with intercultural dialogue, particularly given the different challenges that the world is facing now.